Welcome, everyone. My name is Craig Iskowitz, and this is Wealth Management Today's YouTube channel. I'm president of Ezra Group, a management consulting firm in wealth management and the surrounding fintech space. We are here with Doug Fritz, and Doug is the president of F2 Strategy. It's a consulting firm based in Tiburon, California, that focuses on wealth management technology strategy. Hey, Doug, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Craig, thanks for having me.
And Doug, while he's from Tiburon, he's actually calling in from Kauai, which is a little island somewhere in the Pacific.
That's right. The sun does not set on wealth management technology strategy, as you know.
I know that for a fact, absolutely. Okay, so today we are talking about a couple different topics, mainly around bank technology. Doug is an expert in bank technology. We've done a bunch of projects together in this area. So today we're going to be talking a bit about trust accounting versus agency accounting and some of the aspects of that that are becoming trends in the banking industry. So Doug, do you want to talk a bit about the difference between trust and agency accounting and why some banks are starting their own RIAs?
Sure, yeah. I would say that the big divide that a lot of wealth management clients really don't understand as they go looking for wealth management advice and someone to actually manage their wealth, or that you have bank-based wealth management organizations that really come at the process of wealth management from the banking side. And historically, those have been trust accounting platforms and process, and sort of work within that OCC-regulated bank-based environment. And then from the other direction, you've got the advice-based, wirehouse or RIA model, which comes much more from a non-banking environment. And historically, decades ago, they were to the end client more distinct models than they are today. But as standards have moved up in the world, as there's been more of a push towards advice versus transactional business, the gap between the wirehouse or RIA versus the bank-based trust advice model has narrowed to the point where a client coming into the marketplace with $10, $15 million to invest might not just inherently know the difference between those two things. And in fact, when they're looking for advice, they might, going into a prospect meeting with an advisor, might not even know, even until after even the first call, that there are those two different models. And the differences in those two models are significant in terms of how the advisor manages the portfolio, and more importantly to this conversation, the flexibility that they have to innovate and to move forward with things that clients are looking for today.
Great. I've seen the same thing, Doug, in my business. So let's talk about the two different sides of bank wealth management. How has the agency and trust business come together over the past 20 years?
Yeah, it's really defining the modern bank wealth management organization, and I think it also defines a lot of the struggle that bank wealth management firms have with keeping up with client expectations on innovation and things. Mm-hmm. Decades ago, those accounts were the majority of those accounts opened within the bank wealth management organization were trust accounts. The complexities of which were, maybe modern at that time. It was sort of a modern way to address wealth management. Get a lawyer, set up a trust, put the assets in the trust, and have a trust officer and a portfolio manager manage the trust assets. Mm-hmm. As times moved on, that involving the lawyer and setting up the trust, that process has fallen a little bit out of vogue for the modern wealth management client, and they no longer do that primarily, to the point where the average sort of account mix right now of new bank wealth management accounts, agency versus trust, from my clients and my experience, it's 4 or 5 agency accounts or relationships for every one trust account and relationship, and that really has pushed that bank trust model, where it was very technically focused around the trust. It's pushed it further and further to the side, and banks are having a hard time competing with wirehouse agency business, where they have to sort of to some degree lug around this legacy trust accounting trust process to compete with their agency competitors.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting when it regards to the agency and trust business coming together. But now that they're together, we've seen that over the past 20 years. What are some of the impacts on the technology side from the agency and trust businesses being commingled for so long on the trust platforms?
Yeah, good question. So, like a lot of firms, they're running their agency business, which is 75, sometimes 80% of their business now, on the legacy trust accounting platforms, and that requires them to go through a number of hoops that a regular agency account outside of a bank wealth management organization, like an RIA or a wirehouse, would not have to go through. Things like the Reg 9 process. A lot of firms are actually running Reg 9 process and non-trust assets because they're just tied to the accounting platform. The next issue would be the concept of settlement date. Most trust, actually all trust accounting platforms, modern trust accounting platforms, still run on a settlement date cash-based basis. And when it comes to trading a portfolio, knowing how much of a certain asset or a certain mix of assets a client has, you need trade date data. Every other platform in the market has a trade date platform. And there are a handful of other issues. Probably the primary other issue would be that there are really no market-ready modern trust accounting platforms out there. SEI today is looking to launch the SWP, or their modern renovation of the Trust 3000 platform, but it's taken a while to get to market. I would say universally, not every bank wealth CTO that I've met really agrees that it's the right platform to go forward, but there really is no other viable alternative. SunGuard Advantage is out there, but with the sale of FIS, there's really not a lot of innovation going on there at all. And so if you're a CTO for a bank wealth management firm, finding some innovative way to run your trust platform that's viable and market ready is very difficult today.
So some of my bank clients have been looking into or have already started their own RIAs. Do you see that as an advantage, and why?
Yeah, that's a great pathway forward. I mean, if you've got 4 out of 5 accounts that you're opening, they're just pure agency. They don't need to be put into a trust platform. Setting up an RIA within your organization to run those assets makes a lot of sense. I mean, you can get the technology is less expensive. The process in terms of opening and managing those accounts is less onerous. It allows you to run those assets really in the way that they probably should be run, which is much more streamlined. Do not need to go through a lengthy trust account opening process, and then be tied to some of the trust Reg 9 processes and controls and checkpoints that you would need for the more onerous account structures.
Now we've talked about the trend of banks starting their own RIAs and why they would want to do that. So let's do some free consulting. What are some of the considerations for a bank that's planning to launch their own RIA? What kind of advice would we give them?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think really unwinding that, especially if it's decades old, really potentially unwinding the agency accounts that are on the trust side can be difficult. You might need to actually repaper some of those clients in a different investment management agreement. Certainly, getting the data out of the trust accounting platform could also be difficult. Getting it set up, getting it set up on the new platform, and then working with your compliance team on really understanding what does that impact to the level of compliance. I mean, you've likely built your entire wealth management process around the trust accounting norms and standards. Building new standards within an organization, that cultural shift, the client shifts associated with that can be very cumbersome and difficult. I think that the folks that are beginning to do this, I think, are brave, and they've seen the light and they're moving forward. Those that haven't yet, I can understand why. It is not a small thing to do.
No, it's not. It's definitely not an easy process. So do you have any best practices that you share with your clients if they're coming to you, say, Doug, I'm looking to start an RIA? What are some things you say? Here's the things you absolutely have to do before you even start.
I think understanding the RIA market and really understanding what it takes to do that, especially if you don't have anybody in the organization that has either come from that world or had much experience in it, I think that's really critical, is really understanding what you're getting into, fully vetting this with your compliance team and making sure that actually even your OCC regulatory partners are on board with the process. and really get a roadmap lined up. I mean, set out this 5-year strategy of what it's going to take to move that direction, what you'll need as an organization set up as an RIA, and then the control points as you go forward. And I think that the best things that I can give people in terms of free consulting is start small. Start small, set it up. Go small, learn your way through it, and the big bang approach on something this material to your business would be very risky.
Risky, how so?
I think you're endangering the lifeblood of your organization. If you've got 4 out of 5 of your relationships, that you're looking to transfer over in one big foul swoop, one small error and an error where they can readily move to somebody else that's not messing up their accounts. You really want to handle those accounts and those relationships very smoothly, to the point where I would actually say, doing it for new business might actually make more sense than doing it for legacy business as a start.
So we talked a bit about what to watch out for when a bank moves away from the trust model, but what are some of the benefits?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of benefits to moving off of the trust platform. Probably the number one is cost. I mean, you can actually use lower cost technology. You can have a lower cost operations process around those. You don't need the full team of trust operations folks to manage the business. In addition, you start to see more technologies that will work for your business as opposed to ones that must integrate with that trust accounting backend. And that'll allow you to automate more of the account onboarding process with clients, actually automate a lot of the contact with clients, really reduce the friction between your organization and your clients. You and I talk a lot about the new concept of time poverty in technology and how increasingly, very wealthy people are actually very time poor. And being able to keep up with that poverty and not really continue to sap their limited time becomes a huge win for those organizations doing that. I think in addition to automating and reducing friction for clients, you've got the ability to start to leverage some of the robo platforms and integrate them into your value add for your clients. Mm-hmm. Really very difficult to integrate a robo into a trust accounting platform. Settlement date, trade date differences are big, and a handful of other things out there that make it very difficult to do it. I don't know anybody that's integrated a robo into their trust accounting platform. They may be out there, but it's far more complex. And I think also from a regulatory standpoint, just not having to go through more of the laborious Reg 9 process for accounts that don't need it. It gives the portfolio managers time back to service those clients, do more planning, bring on more clients, and manage them in a more current model behavioral sort of a way. I think that's wins all around.
So talking about banks moving their agency business off of their trust platforms, so what are some of the vendors that banks should be looking at for supporting pure agency business? I know one of my clients is Fiserv, and they're very big in banking, wirehouses, and supporting agency business with their wealth management platforms. So what are some platforms you work with?
Yeah, that's one of the great reasons that you can get off of the trust accounting platform, that trust only business, is you get exposure to some of the great new high-tech, fast, integrated solutions out there. So, ones that I know a lot of people look at as they move away from this is Adapar for performance reporting and analytics, sort of a fantastic, 21st century analytics tool. I like a lot of the UMA, UMH solutions that you can start to approach. And some of them actually do work fine with trust accounting, but it's much easier to run those off of an agency basis, like MyVest, Folio, InvestNet. Things like that are much easier to do in an agency account than in a trust account.
Between those, we can do a whole separate interview just on the different vendors. But what are some of the quick things that banks should be looking at when they're picking vendors? When we've got Fiserv, Folio, Vestmark, MyVest, Advent, when they're doing their vendor evaluation, what's some quick advice we can give them for starting this process?
Yeah, you're going to still have, as you do that, you're going to still have some accounts on the trust accounting platform, and then those solutions are going to have to then integrate back to the trust accounting platform, and so that's critical. Like, can this analytic tool, can this agency accounting platform, can this compliance engine for that, can it actually integrate with my SunGuard Advantage or SEI accounting? And have they done it before? Do I have to pave that road myself with them, or do they have existing implementations where they've done that with someone else? And those are some of the questions that I certainly would ask going into this process.
Well, thanks, Doug. This has been really informative. I hope all of the viewers got as much out of it as I did. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks very much for taking the time out of your tropical vacation to talk to me.
Thanks so much for having me, Craig, and look forward to working again.